Coccinellidae is a widespread family of small beetles. They are commonly known as ladybugs in North America and ladybirds in the United Kingdom. Lady refers to Mother Mary. Entomologists use the names ladybird beetles or lady beetles to avoid confusion with true bugs. The more than 6,000 described species have a global distribution and are found in a variety of habitats. They are oval beetles with a domed back and flat underside. Many of the species have conspicuous aposematic warning colors and patterns, such as red with black spots, that warn potential predators that they taste bad. Most coccinellid species are carnivorous predators, preying on insects such as aphids and scale insects. Other species are known to consume non-animal matter, including plants and fungi. They are promiscuous breeders, reproducing in spring and summer in temperate regions and during the wet season in tropical regions. Many predatory species lay their eggs near colonies of prey, providing their larvae with a food source. Like most insects, they develop from larva to pupa to adult. Temperate species hibernate and diapause during the winter. Tropical species are dormant during the dry season. Coccinellids migrate between dormancy and breeding sites. Species that prey on agricultural pests are considered beneficial insects. Several species have been introduced outside their range as biological control agents, with varying degrees of success. Some species are pests themselves and attack agricultural crops, or can infest people's homes, particularly in winter. Invasive species like Harmonia axaridis can pose an ecological threat to native coccinellid species. Other threats to coccinellids include climate change and habitat destruction. These insects have played roles in folklore, religion, and poetry, and are particularly popular in nursery rhymes. Etymology of the name Coccinellidae, created by Pierre-André Latreille in 1807, is derived from the Latin word coccineas, meaning scarlet. 5. The common English name ladybird originated in Britain, where the insects became known as Our Lady's birds. 6. 7. Mary Our Lady was often depicted wearing a red cloak in early art, and the 7 spots of the species Coccinella septempuncta, the most common in Europe, were said to represent her 7 joys and 7 sorrows. 8. In the United States, the name was popularly adapted to ladybug. 9. Entomologists prefer the names ladybird beetles or lady beetles to avoid confusion with true bugs. 9, 10, 11, 12. Names in some other countries may be similar. For example, in Germany, they are known as Meringfer, meaning Mary beetle, or lady beetle. 9. Coccinellids range in size from 0.8 to 18 millimeters, 0.03 to 0.7 in. 13. Adult females tend to be slightly larger than males. 14. They are generally oval with domed backs and flattened undersides. 7. They have large compound eyes and clubbed antennae with 7 to 11 segments. The powerful mandibles, equivalent to jaws, typically have pairs of teeth which face each other. 15. The coccinellid prothorax, front of thorax, is broad and convex and can cover the back of the head. 16, 17 being beetles, they have hardened, non-overlapping forewings, known as elytra, which cover up the more fragile hindwings when the insects are not in flight. Their legs are relatively short. 16 with a tarsal formula of 4 may appear 3 minus 3 minus 3 because the third segment of each tarsus is reduced. 18, 19. The tarsus end of leg has 2 claws at the tip. 16 as adults. These beetles differ from their closest relatives with the following morphological characteristics. 20 coccinellids are often distinctively colored and patterned. The elytron may be light with dark spots or dark with light spots. Light areas are typically yellow, red, orange, or brown, and the spots vary in size and shape and numbers. Some species have striped or checkered patterns. The pigment keratin creates the lighter colors, and melanins create darker colors. Other parts of the body also vary in coloration. 721. These color patterns typically serve as warning coloration, but some can act as camouflage, attract mates, or even regulate heat. 722. Several individual species may display polymorphism and even change color between seasons. 7 coccinellid larvae are elongated with square heads. 23 they are covered in hairs or seta. The abdominal segments, in particular, each having 6 divided into pairs, and 1 to 3 segmented antennae. 27. Their coloration varies from gray, blue-gray, gray-brown or brown and spotted with white, yellow, red, or orange. They tend to brighten as they get closer to adulthood. 24. Fossil history: 6,000 living species of Coccinellidae have been described. 13. They are sparsely preserved in the fossil record. 25. Although molecular clock estimates have placed their origin in the Cretaceous, the oldest fossils of the group are known from the Oise amber of France, dating to the early Eocene Epresian around 53 million years ago, which belonged to the extant genera Rhizobius and Nephis. 26. The greatest number of fossils comes from the younger Eocene Baltic amber, including members of the extant genera Syringium, 27, and Rhizobius, as well as extinct genera belonging to the tribes Microies, Enibaltocides 28, and Sticklotidinae, Electrolotus. 25. Phylogeny. Further information. List of Coccinellidae. Genera of Coccinellidae are within the superfamily Coccinelloidea, which in turn is part of the Infrorder Cucugiformia, a group containing most of the plant-eating beetles. The ladybirds form the majority of the species in the Coccinelloidea. Many of the rest are fungus-feeding beetles or scavengers. 29. Coccinellidae have historically been divided into up 7 subfamilies: Chelicorinae, Coccidulinae, Coccinellinae, Epilachninae, Microizinae, Simninae, and Sticklotidinae, and 35 tribes based on morphology. However, genetic studies have called into question the monophily single ancestry of most of these subfamilies. The monophily of Coccinellinae has the most support. 3031, a 2021 genetic study sampling many species, identified 3 subfamilies: Microizinae with 3 tribes, Coccinellinae 26 tribes, and a newly identified group, the Monocrininae 1 tribe. All 3 subfamilies were strongly supported, but the study noted that although the tribes are mostly monophyletic, their relationships are only weakly supported. The study suggests that the crown group appeared some 143 in the early Cretaceous, and that the group diversified rapidly during the late Cretaceous, perhaps because the growth and diversity of angiosperm plants then encouraged the radiation of insects of the clade Sternorintia, such as aphids, on which ladybirds could feed. 32, an earlier 2009 study concluded that consumption of scale insects is the most basal diet of Coccinellidae. Aphid-eating evolved 3 separate times, and leaf-eating evolved twice, one of which evolved from a clade that contains both aphid-eating and pollen-eating. The fungi-eating also evolved from aphid-eating. 30. Biology and ecology. Flight coccinellid mostly fly during the day. 33. Springy. Cylindrical veins in the hindwings stiffen when in flight and bend when folding. Folding of the wings is further aided by creases in the membrane. 34. These beetles may migrate long distances to hibernation and breeding sites and areas with more food. They appear to be drawn to recognizable landmarks. 35. The more crowded an area is, the more individuals leave, but will remain if there are enough prey species to feed on. 36. Trivial flights refer to flying while foraging or when finding a place to lay eggs. 35.1. Study of species in Britain found that coccinellids can fly as far as 120 kilometers, 75 miles. They flew at speeds of 30 kilometers per hour, 19 miles per hour, and could reach altitudes close to 1,100 meters, 3,600 feet. Life cycle in temperate climates, coccinellids typically breed from late spring to early summer. In warmer temperate regions, reproduction may occur in spring, fall, and winter. Tropical species reproduce during the wet season. 738. Mating is promiscuous. In some species, females appear to be selective in their partners, preferring males of a certain size and color. Males produce sperm packets each with 14,000 sperm and insert 3 of them into the female, even though she can only hold 18,000 sperm. This is likely a form of sperm competition. 739. Like other insects, coccinellids develop from egg to larva to pupa and finally adult. Eggs tend to be bright yellow, and the females lay them close together, standing upright and near where they can access food. 7. The number of eggs in a cluster can vary depending on the species. It is typically in the double digits, but some species can lay over 1,000 eggs in their lifetime. 40. After hatching, the larvae will begin eating, including the other eggs in their clutch. 7. Certain species lay extra infertile trophic eggs with the fertile eggs, providing a backup food source for the larvae when they hatch. The ratio of infertile to fertile eggs increases with scarcity of food at the time of egg laying. 41. Larvae typically have ferenstar stages with 3 molts between them. 42. The larva eventually transitions into a pupa, which involves the development of a haunch, the fusion of the legs to the body, and the attachment of the posterior to the surface. 7. To pupae may be uncovered, partially covered, or fully covered by a larval skin, depending on the species. The pupa is mostly immobile, but the head can move in response to irritation. When the adult emerges, it has its hindwings, while the elytron starts out softer and lighter in color, with no patterns. 43. The length of each development stage varies based on climate and between species. For Adalia bipunctata, eggs hatch after 4 to 8 days, the larva stage lasts around 3 weeks, and the pupa lasts 7 to 10 days. 7. Adult coccinellids develop much of their final coloration within hours, but may not fully darken for weeks or months. 40. For the lifespan of an adult reaches up to a year. 7. In temperate areas, coccinellids may hibernate or enter diapause during the winter. Individuals during this period gather in clumps, large or small depending on the species. Overwintering insects can be found both in lowland areas, aggregating under dead vegetation, and at the tops of hills, hibernating under rocks and on grass tussocks. 45. In areas with particularly hot summers, the insects experience summer dormancy or estivation. In the tropics, coccinellids enter dormancy during the dry season. 7. Trophic coccinellids act both as predators, prey, and parasitic hosts in food webs. 46. The majority of coccinellids are carnivorous and predatory, typically preying on Sternorintia insects like aphids, scale insects, whiteflies, psyllids, and adelgids. Some species feed on the larvae of moths and other beetles, as well as mites. Since much of their prey are agricultural pests, coccinellids are considered to be beneficial insects. 47, 48, 49. A 2009 metastudy by Hodick and Hunt found that aphid-eaters constituted around 68% of species that live in temperate areas, but only 20% of species worldwide. Around 36% of total species mostly feed on scale insects. 49 larvae and adults eat the same foods, unlike in other insect groups. 7 ladybird species vary in dietary specificity. An example of a specialist species is those of the genus Stethurus, which feed on spider mites. Aphid-eaters tend to be generalist, they have a high voracity, and can multiply quickly in response to outbreaks and switch to other prey when the ephemeral aphids become scarce. Predators of scale insects tend to be less voracious and are slower breeders and developers, matching their prey. 50. Under pressure from coccinellid predation, aphid species have evolved to become more toxic, forcing coccinellids to develop immunities. 51. Coccinellid predators of aphids need to defend themselves against ants that tend and defend aphids for their honeydew. 52. And coccinellid eggs laid near aphids are disposed of. 46. The majority of predatory species may also supplement their diet with other sources of food, both in their larval and adult stages. 58. Non-animal matter consumed include leaves, pollen, nectar, sap, fungi, and honeydew. 4758-59, members of the tribe Halizini of the subfamily Coccinellidae are obligate fungus feeders. 60 coccinellids of any life stage are preyed on by predators such as birds, spiders, ants, and lacewings. 61, they are also hosts for parasites, including some flies, ticks, mites, hymenopterans, and nematodes, and pathogens, including bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. 4660 to Wolbachia bacteria infects eggs and kills male zygotes. The promiscuity of coccinellids has led to their being affected by sexually transmitted infections. 64. Defensecacinal septum puncti reflex bleeding bright warning coloration of many coccinellids discourage potential predators, warning of their toxicity. A 2015 study of 5 ladybird species found that their coloration honestly signaled their toxicity, implying the warning is genuine. Species with more contrast with the background environment tended to be more toxic. 65 Coccinellid hemolymph blood contains toxic alkaloids, azimacrolides, and polyamides, as well as foul-smelling pyrazines. 66 Coccinellids can produce at least 50 types of alkaloids. When disturbed, ladybirds further defend themselves with reflex bleeding, exuding drops from their tibiofemoral knee joints, effectively presenting predators with a sample of their toxic and bitter body fluid. 61. Predator-deterring poisons are particularly important for the immobile pupa. 67. Access to food can affect the concentration of both pigments and toxins. 68. The similarity of coccinellid patterning in red and orange with black markings has led to suggestions that they and some species of chrysomelids. 69. Form Mullerian mimicry ring. 70. Particularly to defend them from birds. 71. Despite their chemical defenses, coccinellids are preyed on by some clarid beetles in the genus Anaclerus, several species of which are brightly colored in red and black, and which possibly sequester the toxins of the prey to defend themselves against other predators. 72. As an anti-predator defense, spiders of the genus Eresus, known as ladybird spiders, have evolved to replicate the patterns of coccinellids. This is a form of Batesian mimicry, as the spiders lack the chemicals. This resemblance is limited to adult male spiders, which are actively searching for females and exposed, unlike the females and young, which remain sheltered in burrows. 73. Distribution and status. The widespread and invasive Harmonia axyridis Coccinellide are found on every continent except Antarctica. 74. Asian and African species are less studied than others. 75. Coccinellids can be found in a variety of habitats, both on the ground and in the trees. They may specialize using certain plants. Some species can live in extreme environments, such as high mountains, arid deserts, and cold regions. 76. Several of the most famous species have wide ranges, but others are more endemic and possibly threatened. 75. Threats to coccinellids include climate change, agriculture, urbanization, and invasive species. Coccinellid biodiversity will likely be affected by the rising of both average temperatures and heat fluctuations. Climate change may lead to smaller larvae, as well as increased energy and metabolic needs and interspecific predation. Agriculture and urbanization threatens these insects, though habitat destruction and homogenization and the use of pesticides. Invasive threats include other coccinellids, particularly C. septum puncta in North America and H. axyridis globally. 75. These invaders outcompete the native species as well as eat their eggs. 75-77. As of 2022, the IUCN Red List does not list the conservation status for any coccinellid, though there is an IUCN SSC Ladybird Specialist Group. Conservationists have suggested several measures for protecting the insects, including citizen science and education programs, habitat preservation and restoration, prevention of the spread of invasive species, and a global monitoring program. 75. Relationship to humans. Ladybird used as a biological control in horticulture or biologic control. Larval Novius cardinalis feeding on Iceria perchasi. Coccinellids have been valued in biological pest control, as they prey on agricultural pests such as aphids and scale insects. Their importance in controlling pests was noted as far back as 1814 in England. 7. Their efficiency can vary. Sometimes they have a relatively small effect on aphid populations. At others, they cause significant seasonal declines. 78. Several species have been introduced to areas outside their native range, the first being the Vedalia beetle, Novius cardinalis. 7. The larva of the species was introduced to California in 1887 from Australia to protect citrus trees from cottony cushion scale. The project was markedly successful, costing $1,500 in 1889. 79, making it a textbook example of the great potential of classical biological control as a tactic for suppressing invasive pests. The beetle was then used in 29 countries, again with success. Reasons for this include its high prey specificity, fast development, multiple generations each year, efficient discovery of host patches, and larval development completed on a single host insect. 80. There have been many further attempts to use ladybird species against pests, with varying degrees of success. 81.7. Scale insect-eating coccinellids have been more successfully used than aphid predators. 7 out of 155 deliberate introductions meant to control aphids by the year 2000, only one was deemed to be substantially successful. This is due to aphid-eating species being fast-breeding, generalist and voracious, and thus difficult to control. 82. As pests mass of ladybirds at rest cluster of invasive Asian lady beetles inside a farm building after the fall harvest in South Dakota, coccinellids can also act as pests. Harmonia axaridis is native to East Asia, but has been introduced to the Americas, Europe, and Africa. 75. In North America, this species begins to appear indoors in the autumn when they leave their summer feeding sites to search out places to stay for winter. Typically, when temperatures warm to the mid-60s around 18°C in the late afternoon, they swarm onto or into buildings illuminated by the sun from nearby fields and forests. 83-84. After an abnormally long period of hot, dry weather in the summer of 1976 in the UK, a marked increase in the aphid population was followed by a plague of the native Coccinella septimpuncta. There were many reports of people being bitten as the supply of aphids dwindled. 85-86-87H. Axaridis. C. Septimpuncta and Hippodamia convergens are the most common causes of ladybird taint in wine. As few as 1.3 to 1.5 coccinellids per 1 kilogram to 0.2 pounds of grapes can affect wine quality when they are present during the wine-making process. 88. The Mexican bean beetle is an agricultural pest as it primarily feeds on plants, especially legumes, instead of insects. 89. In culture, coccinellids have had important roles in culture and religion, being associated with luck, love, fertility, and prophecy. Ladybird is an affectionate term for someone, such as a loved one. In European folklore, an insect acts as a matchmaker, crawling on a woman and then flying to their true love. Coccinellids have been said to predict the future, particularly weather conditions and how well the crops will grow. 90-91. In Christianity, coccinellids have been seen as the literal gatekeepers of heaven. A Swedish name for the insects, Himmelskannikla, means keys of heaven. Jews have referred to the insects as the cow of Moses, our teacher. The Cherokee have revered them as the great beloved woman. This was used as a title for the highest-ranking woman in the government, who would be painted in the colors and patterns of the insect during ceremonies. 90. To coccinellids have been popularly featured in poems and nursery rhymes, the most famous being Ladybird. Ladybird. This has come in several forms, including